Most people don't fail because they lack talent, resources, or opportunity. They fail because they don't know why they started in the first place. When your reason is weak, every obstacle feels heavier, every delay feels like defeat, and every challenge becomes a reason to quit. But when your why is strong, something shifts inside you. You stop looking for shortcuts and start building endurance. You stop chasing quick wins and start committing to long-term growth. A strong why gives meaning to your struggle. It turns pain into purpose and effort into something worth fighting for. Without it, you are easily distracted, easily discouraged, and easily influenced by what others are doing. You drift instead of directing your life. You react instead of leading. And over time, that lack of direction quietly steals your potential. The truth is, clarity creates power. When you know exactly why you are doing something, your focus sharpens. Decisions become easier because they are filtered through purpose. You no longer say yes to everything, because you understand that every yes to the wrong thing is a no to the right thing. Your why becomes your internal compass. It guides you when motivation fades, when results are slow, and when doubt starts to creep in. And doubt will come. There will be moments when you question everything, when progress feels invisible, when quitting seems easier than continuing. In those moments, discipline alone is not enough. You need something deeper. You need a reason that reminds you why stopping is not an option. A reason that pulls you forward even when your energy is low. A reason that is bigger than temporary discomfort. That is the power of starting with your why. It is not just a concept, it is a foundation. Because if the foundation is weak, everything built on top of it will eventually collapse. But if the foundation is strong, you can withstand pressure, setbacks, and uncertainty without losing direction. And here is where most people get it wrong. They focus on what they want instead of why they want it. They say they want success, money, recognition, or freedom, but they never go deeper. They never ask what those things truly represent in their life. Is it security? Is it respect? Is it the ability to provide? Is it proving something to themselves? When you dig deeper, your why becomes personal. And when it becomes personal, it becomes powerful. Because you are no longer chasing something surface level. You are building something that is connected to your identity. Something that matters beyond external validation. And when your actions align with that deeper purpose, consistency stops feeling like a burden. It becomes a natural expression of who you are becoming. You stop needing constant motivation because your direction is clear. You stop comparing your journey to others because you are grounded in your own path. And most importantly, you stop quitting when things get hard because your why reminds you that what you are building is worth the struggle. Most people are chasing a version of winning that was handed to them, not chosen by them. From a young age, you are told what success should look like: titles, money, recognition, status. And without realizing it, you begin to measure your life against standards you never created. You start running a race without ever questioning if it is even the right race for you. That is where the problem begins, because if you don't define what winning means for your life, you will spend years achieving things that don't actually fulfill you. You will hit milestones that feel empty, you will reach goals that don't feel like yours, and no matter how much you accomplish, something will always feel missing. The truth is, winning is not a universal definition. It is personal, it is internal, it is deeply connected to who you are and who you are becoming. But most people avoid this truth because it requires honesty. It requires stepping back and asking hard questions about what truly matters. It requires letting go of the need for approval and choosing alignment instead. And alignment is not always comfortable. Sometimes it means walking away from paths that look impressive but feel wrong. Sometimes it means slowing down when the world is telling you to speed up. Sometimes it means choosing growth over applause, purpose over popularity, and meaning over metrics. That is the shift. Real winning is not about how things look on the outside. It's about how they feel on the inside. It's about waking up with a sense of direction, knowing that your actions are connected to something that matters to you. It is about making progress that aligns with your values, not just your ambitions. Because ambition without alignment leads to burnout. You can push yourself to achieve more, to work harder, to chase bigger goals. But if those goals are not connected to your core, the cost will eventually catch up with you. You will feel drained, disconnected, and constantly searching for the next thing to fill the gap. Redefining winning changes that. It shifts your focus from external validation to internal growth. Instead of asking how others see you, you start asking who you are becoming. Instead of chasing comparison, you start building consistency. Instead of needing constant results to feel successful, you begin to value the process itself. And when that happens, everything changes. You become more resilient because your sense of worth is no longer tied to outcomes. You become more focused because you are no longer distracted by what others are doing. You become more fulfilled because your progress actually means something to you. This is where true confidence is built. not from achievements alone, but from alignment between your actions and your values. When you know you are moving in the right direction, even small steps feel powerful, even slow progress feels meaningful. And setbacks no longer define you, because they are part of a path you have chosen with intention. Redefining winning is not about lowering your standards. It is about raising your awareness. It is about understanding that success without fulfillment is not success at all. And once you see that clearly, you stop chasing what looks good and start building what feels right. Most people say they want to grow, but their daily choices are built around staying comfortable. And that contradiction is where potential quietly disappears. Comfort feels safe because it is familiar. It asks nothing new from you. It keeps you in routines you already understand, surrounded by results you have already created. But that safety comes with a cost. It limits your exposure, your learning, your expansion. Over time, comfort becomes a cage that looks like stability. You convince yourself that you are being patient, that you are waiting for the right moment, that you are preparing. But in reality, you are avoiding the very tension that creates growth. Growth does not come from repetition of what you already know. It comes from stepping into what you do not yet understand. It comes from facing situations where you are unsure, where your skills are tested, where your confidence is challenged. That is why it feels uncomfortable. Because you are stretching beyond your current identity. And that stretch is necessary. Without it, there is no transformation. Without it, you remain the same person, thinking the same way, making the same decisions, producing the same results. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is not time. It is exposure to discomfort. The more you avoid it, the longer you stay stuck. The more you lean into it, the faster you evolve. And yet, the mind resists. It looks for shortcuts, for easier paths, for reasons to delay. It tells you to wait until you feel ready, until conditions are perfect, until fear disappears. But readiness is not a requirement for growth. It is a result of it. You become ready by doing the thing that makes you uncomfortable. You build confidence by taking action in uncertainty. You develop strength by facing resistance, not by avoiding it. This is where the shift happens. When you stop asking what feels easy and start asking what moves you forward. When you stop prioritizing immediate comfort and start investing in long-term progress. Because comfort gives you relief in the moment, but growth gives you results that compound over time. It builds skills, resilience, awareness, and capability. It reshapes how you see yourself. And once that identity begins to change, your actions follow naturally. You no longer hesitate in the same way because you have proven to yourself that you can handle more than you thought. You no longer shrink in the face of challenge because you understand that challenge is the path, not the obstacle. This does not mean you eliminate fear. Fear will still be there. It does not mean you always feel confident. There will be moments of doubt, but you move anyway. That is the difference. You stop negotiating with discomfort and start using it as a signal that you are on the edge of something meaningful, a signal that you are stepping into growth. And over time, what once felt uncomfortable becomes your new standard. What once felt difficult becomes your new normal. That is how progress works. It is not one big leap. It is a series of small decisions to choose growth when comfort is available. And those decisions, repeated consistently, create a life that looks completely different from the one you would have lived if you had stayed where it was easy most. People spend years waiting for something outside of them to change before they decide to change themselves. They wait for better circumstances, better opportunities, better timing. They point to their environment, their past, other people, and they build a quiet belief that their life is shaped by forces they cannot control. And as long as that belief stays in place, nothing truly shifts. Because when you give away responsibility, you also give away power. It feels easier in the moment to blame, to justify, to explain why things are the way they are. It protects your ego. It removes pressure, but it also keeps you stuck in the exact place you are trying to escape. Responsibility is often misunderstood as something heavy, something that adds stress. In reality, it does the opposite. It gives you control. It gives you direction. It reminds you that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you always control how you respond, how you adapt, and what you choose to do next. That is where your power lives, not in perfect conditions, but in your ability to take ownership of your actions regardless of conditions. The moment you truly accept that your life is a result of your choices, everything begins to change. Your focus shifts from what is happening to you to what you can do about it. You stop asking why this is happening and start asking what you can learn, what you can improve, what you can do differently, and that shift is not small. It is the difference between being reactive and being intentional, between drifting and directing, between hoping for change and creating it. Taking responsibility does not mean ignoring reality. It does not mean pretending challenges do not exist. It means facing them without excuses. It means refusing to let circumstances define your identity or limit your potential, because circumstances can influence your starting point, but they do not determine your direction unless you allow them to. This is where discipline becomes important, because once you accept responsibility, you cannot hide behind comfort anymore. You cannot wait for motivation to show up. You cannot rely on external validation to move forward. You become the source of your own progress. Your actions, your habits, your standards, these become the drivers of your life. And that requires consistency. It requires showing up even when it is inconvenient, even when it is difficult, even when no one is watching. Because responsibility is not a one-time decision, it is a daily practice. It is choosing to own your time, your energy, your focus. It is choosing to make decisions that align with where you want to go, not just what feels good in the moment. And over time, those choices compound, they build momentum. They create results that reflect the ownership you have taken. You begin to see that change was never as far away as it seemed. It was waiting for you to take control, waiting for you to stop outsourcing your future and start building it with intention. And once you experience that shift, it becomes difficult to go back, because you realize that responsibility is not a burden you carry. It is the power you claim. Most people underestimate how much their environment shapes their identity. They believe their success depends only on personal effort, discipline, and motivation. But they ignore the silent influence of the people around them, the conversations they tolerate, and the standards they accept as normal. Over time, these unseen forces begin to define what feels acceptable, what feels possible, and what feels out of reach. You may think you are in control, but if your environment is built on low standards, it will quietly pull you in that direction no matter how strong your intentions are, because human behavior adapts. It adjusts to what is repeated, what is reinforced, and what is normalized. If you are constantly surrounded by negativity, excuses, and a lack of ambition, those patterns begin to feel familiar, and what feels familiar becomes comfortable. And what becomes comfortable becomes your default. This is how people slowly lower their expectations without even realizing it. Not through one big decision, but through constant exposure to environments that do not challenge them to grow. On the other hand, when you surround yourself with high standards, everything changes. You begin to see what is possible at a different level. You are exposed to different mindsets, different habits, different ways of thinking and acting, and that exposure raises your own expectations. You start to notice where you have been settling. You start to question behaviors you once accepted. You begin to elevate your actions, not because someone forces you, but because your environment no longer supports mediocrity. Standards are contagious. Just like negativity spreads, so does excellence. When you are around people who are disciplined, focused, and committed to growth, it influences you. It challenges you to step up. It pushes you to align your actions with a higher level of performance. And this is not about comparison. It is not about feeling less than or trying to prove something. It is about alignment. It is about placing yourself in spaces where growth is expected, where accountability is normal, where progress is the standard, not the exception, because you do not rise to your goals. You fall to your environment. Your daily surroundings shape your habits, your thinking, and ultimately your results. And if those surroundings are not intentionally chosen, they will be randomly accepted. That is where most people lose control. They do not actively design their environment. They simply stay in what is familiar, even if it is limiting them. But growth requires intention. It requires making decisions about who you spend time with, what you listen to, what you watch, and what you allow into your mental space. It requires setting boundaries, even when it is uncomfortable. It requires walking away from environments that no longer align with the person you are becoming. And that is not easy, because sometimes those environments include people you have known for a long time. Sometimes it means being misunderstood. Sometimes it means standing alone for a period of time while you transition into a new space. But that temporary discomfort is part of the process, because when you raise your standards, you are not just changing your environment, you are changing your identity. You are deciding that average is no longer acceptable, that excuses are no longer tolerated, that growth is no longer optional. And once that decision is made, your actions begin to reflect it. Your focus sharpens, your discipline strengthens, your results begin to shift, not because of luck, but because you placed yourself in an environment where success is the expectation. Most people are waiting for a feeling that never arrives. They tell themselves they will start when they feel ready, when their confidence is higher, when their plan is perfect, when the fear disappears. But that moment does not exist. Readiness is not something you wait for. It is something you create through action. The longer you delay, the more distant it feels, and the more intimidating the first step becomes. This is how hesitation turns into stagnation. Not because you lack ability, but because you keep postponing the moment where growth actually begins. The truth is, clarity does not come before action. It comes because of it. You do not think your way into confidence. You act your way into it. Every step forward gives you feedback, and that feedback refines your direction. Without movement, there is no information, no adjustment, no progress. You stay stuck in a cycle of overthinking, analyzing, and doubting, convincing yourself that preparation is progress. But preparation without execution leads nowhere. It creates the illusion of movement while keeping you exactly where you are. Acting before you feel ready breaks that cycle. It forces you to confront uncertainty instead of avoiding it. It pushes you into situations where you have to adapt, learn, and respond in real time. And that is where real growth happens. Not in perfect conditions, but in imperfect action. The fear you feel is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are stepping into something unfamiliar. And unfamiliar does not mean impossible, it simply means new. But the mind interprets new as risk, and it tries to protect you by keeping you where it feels safe. That safety, however, comes at the cost of opportunity, because every time you choose comfort over action, you reinforce the belief that you are not ready. You strengthen hesitation. You build a habit of delay. Over time, that habit becomes your identity. You become someone who waits instead of someone who moves. And that identity shapes your future. The shift begins when you decide that action matters more than certainty. When you accept that mistakes are part of the process, not something to be avoided at all costs. Because mistakes are not failures. They are data. They show you what works and what does not. They guide your next step. And without them, you remain in the dark, guessing instead of learning. Taking action before you feel ready does not mean acting recklessly. It means starting before everything is perfectly aligned. It means trusting that you will figure things out as you go. It means building confidence through experience rather than waiting for it to appear. And as you take those steps, something begins to change. The things that once felt intimidating start to feel manageable. The fear begins to shrink, not because it disappears, but because you prove to yourself that you can move forward despite it. That is where real confidence is built, not in waiting, but in doing. Not in certainty, but in courage. And the more you act, the more momentum you create. And momentum makes the next step easier, and the next decision clearer. Until eventually, what once felt impossible becomes part of your normal